I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only
What's
one.
up, everybody? Welcome to my channel.
No one
I'm
likes being
Sunshinery. Make
lied
sure
to.
to subscribe and like this video.
You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now
I've been wanting to share more about my experience at the Meadows. It truly was life-changing. I just needed to get away from all of the chaos. I knew I needed help. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I knew I needed help with codependency. I could clearly see that I was not in healthy relationships, but I didn't understand why that was happening. I feel like I've grown in every aspect of my life. I feel like I finally know who I am.
What else is next?
I feel like right now the biggest block for me is still working with the reputation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. We are here, yes, for another episode of Rachel Goes Rogue podcast, chapter 32. They call it a spa. Ooh, I wonder what she could be talking about. Well, the show notes say, as Scandoval was the top story in the tabloids and magazines, Rachel was in treatment. She's ready to share with you her experience during those 90 days in a mental health facility. I will say I'm interested in knowing about her experience at the Meadows, so this seems like this will be a great episode, and also an indicator that treatment facilities like that are not normal treatment facilities like regular people can afford normally to go to. And I hope that we can understand that this is a higher class treatment facility as we're listening to it. When I say very expensive, very expensive. And I will point out too, someone did comment on the last podcast episode that they also wanted Bravo to pay for her treatment. And I totally forgot to say that during the episode. But that was another reason why she did not go back. Was not just because they wouldn't pay her what she wanted to be paid, but she also wanted Bravo Evolution to pay for her treatment facility, which, like I said, if you know anything about workers' comp and workers' comp cases, if it's not something that's covered under their insurance, they can't pay for somewhere for you to go that isn't somewhere that is under their recommendation for you. Like, example, I get injured at work and my workers' comp says, well, you can only go to this one chiropractor. He deals with the workers' comp case with your employee's insurance. And I'm like, well, I have my own chiropractor. If I wanted to go to my own chiropractor and not the one that's recommended by workers' comp, I would have to pay outrightly out of pocket to go to that chiropractor. I'm not necessarily saying that's the case here, but it could have been, and we will never know. We will never know if Evolution even offered her a place to go or a treatment facility that they would have paid for. Those are questions I would love to have answers to one day. So, before we begin this episode, Rachel also did like a little preview of what's going to come on her IG where she was kind of getting ready. So I want to play that little video first and then it'll go right into the podcast. So everyone, you know what to do. Let's buckle up and make sure to like this video before we start. And if you are not subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button and then go back to make sure your notifications are set to all. All right, let's get into it.
So, another episode is live for Rachel Goes Rogue. This time, I am talking about my experience at the trauma therapy center, that I dedicated 90 days of my life to. And I wanted to create more of like a picture of the day-to-day and the intense therapy and kind of like what that experience was like. I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but this one's focused on creating more of a picture for you guys. And this one means a lot to me. It's important for me to normalize asking for help when you need it and receiving help and breaking that stigma that still surrounds inpatient trauma therapy. So give it a listen if you have some free time, and I am grateful.
Goes Rogue. This is your host, Rachel Savannah Leviss. And as many of you guys know, I spent 90 days in a mental and behavioral health facility. I got intensive trauma therapy and group therapy, and I've been wanting to share more about my experience at this facility. It was called the Meadows, and it truly was life-changing. It became the beginning of my healing journey, a journey back to my whole integrated self. And I have to thank the therapist there for being incredible and so helpful, and also the other people there that were in my groups and in the community as a whole, because it just was a completely different culture than what I was used to. I am having a guest join me. Her name is Audrey Hope, and she is a certified trauma therapist with over 20 years of experience. She has her own practice in Brentwood, California. She's also an addiction therapist at Seasons in Malibu Rehab facility. So I figured she would be a great guest to have on to speak on what it's like to be in an inpatient trauma therapy center working on things like addiction, but there's more than just addiction that the therapists are treating in a facility like this. And it's important for me to talk about it because I hope to normalize asking for help and getting help in this way, because it truly can be life changing. And I think there's still a little bit of a stigma behind it. And I also recognize that some people thought that I was just going to an inpatient treatment center for a publicity stunt, and that definitely was not the case. I knew I had more to work on after the original 45 days, which is standard for people to spend that amount of time in a rehab facility like this. I knew I needed more work, and it was still too chaotic for me to integrate everything that I've learned so far at that point after the 45 days. I knew I needed to extend and stay longer and discover more about myself. And I'm very happy that I did, because it truly was exactly what I needed.
So I want to get into a little bit about the Meadows before we begin listening to her day-by-day life at the Meadows. The Meadows actually is a place where both Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey also went for what they considered their sex addiction. Now, there is a men's side and a female side. Clearly, the men went to Gentle Paths at the Meadows, where Rachel was at the Willow at the Meadows, which was the women's unit. But this is a luxurious rehab. This isn't a rehab center that everyday normal people like you and me would be able to afford to go to. So that's where people were kind of saying, like, she went to a spa, because it's kind of in that sense like a spa, because it's so luxurious, though you're also getting counseling along with it. You have amenities that you would not have at other rehab centers. Now, there was also a TV correspondent, Rachel Uckadel, who also had attended the Meadows, and she's calling bullshit on Rachel Leviss's bill of $200,000 for this treatment facility, which that's a whole other subject. But let's just say that the program is $65,000, not $200,000, even if you did back-to-back programs, it still wouldn't cost but maybe $130,000. So for her to say that it costed her $200,000 to go to the Meadows is also something that I'm going to call bullshit on, especially because she could also get scholarships from people, or her family just dished out $65,000 for her to go. But let's get into her day-to-day life. As you can see here, these are all the beautiful pictures from the Meadows. It's not a normal everyday rehab where if I was to go to get mental health treatment, I wouldn't have a pool or tennis courts or all of these amenities that Rachel had while she was there. But let's hear what her day-to-day life was like there for 90 days.
I want to bring you guys with me on what a day-to-day would look like at the recovery center that I went to. It was very intense therapy. It definitely was no joke. We would have 2 lectures each day and 2 group sessions each day. And every week we had an assignment. And each week we had a day where we would process that assignment with our group therapist. We also had trauma therapy. So that would be specific one on one therapy time with a certified trauma therapist. Each morning we had peer group. We would go around in a circle and say our name, our claims, which would be like codependency, alcoholism, drug addiction, depression, anxiety, so on and so forth. And then a positive affirmation. So it helped reinforce that neural pathway of positive self-talk rather than criticizing yourself and going down that whole rabbit hole. One of my individualized assignments was a shame backpack where basically I was instructed to write down every mean thing that I could recall being thrown my way, all the insults, all the name calling, all the derogatory comments that I could remember. And once I wrote those down on a piece of paper, I would put the paper in a book. So for each comment, you would have one book, and I had my huge laundry bag that I put all these different books in. It was very, very heavy, and I was assigned to wear that backpack everywhere that I went for that week. Obviously, I did not want to do that, and it did hurt my back, but when I was processing through this assignment with my therapist, I had to read all of the comments, and then my therapist asked me if I wanted to take them on and to carry them with me for the rest of my life. I said, no, I don't. And I was instructed to tear up all of the pieces of paper.
So as I sit here and I wrote down everything she just said, I'm guesstimating at least 7 hours a day of just therapy. That includes the 2 lectures, the 2 groups, the trauma therapy, the peer group in the morning, and all of that. That's intense therapy. If you're going for pretty much 8 hours a day, doing different therapy exercises and peer groups and whatnot. But I found her assignment very interesting. So for every comment, it would have to be put in a book. And then you would have to carry that shameful comment in that book, which equals, I don't know how many books she would have possibly had. But she said she had to use her laundry bag. So I'm assuming that was a lot of fucking books that she was carrying. Which that's gotta be goddamn heavy for sure. And she had to carry it around for an entire week everywhere she went on that campus. I get it. It's kind of showing them, like, this is the weight that you are feeling from all the negativity that you've heard. I get the therapy behind it. That's pretty intense to carry around for an entire week. God damn. I'm waiting to find out if they have, like, weekends off. I mean, because clearly they have time, unless some of these activities are like done in the pool, things like that. I mean, they have lots of amenities there. We know that she went for a long run one day and she missed her peer group in the morning and they got in a lot of trouble because she just had to run it off, that negativity that she was feeling that time when she was finally done with Sandoval. I remember that from one of these podcasts that she did. And personally, I've never done inpatient treatment. I've done a lot of outpatient therapy where I had groups 2 times a week and then personal therapy once a week. So I understand that therapy is necessary. But this is like intense therapy for people that have intense issues. And really, besides not knowing who she was and having an affair with her best friend's boyfriend and making wrong decisions, that's not really something that needs intense therapy, in my opinion, for. Because you feel shameful for what you did. Yes, you do need to talk to a therapist, but not like intense trauma therapy. What other trauma did she have? I get like people are going to say the trauma from the show, but like, I don't even think that, besides like the social media aspect and how people are in her lives in that way, like with every aspect and knowing everything that's happened to her. But it really didn't get that way until season 10, with everyone wanting to know everything that happened with this affair. And I've always said that there must be some other trauma that we are not aware of. I get like her biological mother kind of leaving her, kind of the abandonment from that could be intense and traumatic. So maybe there's more to the trauma in her life that we are very unaware of. That maybe she did need this trauma therapy to be this intense for her. And I get it. Everybody's different. Everyone processes their trauma differently too. So I'm not going to question that. I'm just curious to hear what else she has to say.
Interestingly enough, that week, one of the residents found a newspaper. We would get newspapers in the morning, but the one that came this specific morning was titled Vanderpump Scandal Ruined Reality TV for Me. And it's a picture of me talking to Ariana. I actually had this in my shame backpack, and it's just so wild that it literally made its way into the Meadows. It was kind of surreal that this came into my possession that week of my assignment. That taught me not to take on all of the hate, all of the shame that was being spewed onto me, because life is much harder when you take that on. It's only really healthy to process our own shame that we feel. And once we take on somebody else's projected shame at us, that's when it becomes super unhealthy. So that was one of the huge lessons, huge takeaways that I took with me and integrated into my life post inpatient therapy. So the first few weeks out of treatment, I came home and I had my phone and I did not want it back. But when I did decide to turn my phone on again, which was like a few days after I was discharged, I immediately blocked Tom's number. And in my crisis management plan, my therapist basically said that the crisis moment for me would be contacting Tom Sandoval. So when I was ready, turned on my phone, blocked his number, and I really wasn't on my phone very much. I did not want to see articles. I didn't want to experience all the shame that wasn't mine. Literally, that week was the week that the cast went to Tahoe, and Graham made his first appearance on the show. Shortly after, there were articles saying that I surrendered my dog at a kill shelter and that he was hours away of euthanasia. And that was 100% not true whatsoever. And it was devastating. That was really, really hard. at a moment when I was really reacclimating to real life. And during that time, I was in a very vulnerable place. I considered checking myself back into the Meadows because it was so overwhelming and it was so frustrating because I just wanted to defend myself and I wanted to set the record straight. I decided not to speak out. My parents spoke to the press to get the correct story out there, but, people wanted to believe what they wanted to believe, and it just felt like it was a losing battle, and I knew that I needed to speak on that instance for myself, which was a big motivator in why I wanted to come on the Bethany Frankel podcast.
I kind of have some questions. Like, first off, what kind of newspaper was this that got into the Meadows that was an article about how Vanderpump Rules ruined reality TV for somebody? Was this just like the Arizona Times? I don't even know what kind of newspapers they have out that way. But how did they not notice that you were in a photo in this article and you're there to work on your mental health and they're there to protect you as you're going through this process, and nobody stopped you from grabbing the paper that day? You're paying a lot of money to go there and nobody was protecting you from that, or at least had you have a one-on-one with your therapist with it that day, and then you see it at that point where you could talk about your feelings and all of that. To me, that's just crazy. Also, Graham's debut wasn't in Lake Tahoe. Yes, that was oh my God, you have Graham again. That was when everyone realized it, but it was the episode before that when Lisa had him at Vanderpump Dogs and James came and he was reunited. Then the next episode, yes, they went to Lake Tahoe, and I know that this was during the Meadows, not during the actual season, but the way she had said it, I had to correct her. But that's when everyone noticed, yes, them being in Lake Tahoe, and James had the dog, and the tabloids were following them, so they knew that, oh my God, James has Graham, this is freaking crazy. And it's not that people didn't believe your parents' story. To me, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. If you cared for that animal like I care for my fucking cat, literally, I know my cat is 14 years old. I know she's getting older. I'm seeing signs of her finally aging, and it's breaking my heart that I cry thinking of the thought of just even losing her. I get that you were away and you couldn't be with your dog, but why wouldn't you prevent even them taking the dog anywhere else to somebody else to then own type of a thing, getting rid of the dog per se? I did see the photos. The bite was pretty bad. We don't know what the dog was also feeling. The dog was probably going through distress. One minute it's with its owner, the next minute it's not, and it's, 90 days later and they still don't know where their mother is, kind of a feeling. Animals feel emotion too. So God only knows what Graham was feeling. Owning any pet is not an easy task, and from the jump, you should have had that dog trained. I mean, we've heard stories since Graham's been in the picture on Vanderpump of just how wild and crazy he was. Though you blame that on James, but when he was with James for this last season, honestly, I thought that Graham, yes, he might have had to get used to a new environment. There are other animals in the house, like cats, that he wasn't, used to. That adjustments had to be made, and more training might have needed to happen. If you knew that you were getting out in like even 2 weeks, say, and when that situation happened, I would have been like, I don't know, put the dog in training at like, there could have been things done. There could have been things done that the dog didn't need to stay with the parents, and you could have got back home and had your dog with you. Especially if that dog meant to you as much as, like, I say my cat means to me. She is a child to me. She is my baby. She is the only stable thing I've had in my life for 14 fucking years. And that's why I think of, like, I cannot think of a day without her. And I don't even want to start crying, because I will. Just even thinking about it. Like, that's how emotional I get. But there's always two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle was the truth. And I do believe that it wasn't a kill shelter, but they couldn't control the dog because he was at such a distress point, going from place to place to place, that, yeah, maybe he was fearful. He was acting out. He was in fear of, what the hell, I'm being abandoned kind of a feeling. If anyone should know anything about that, you should. I've never agreed with her with the Graham situation, and if that was her reason also for wanting to go on Bethany Frankel to set the record straight, no, honey, you wanted to set the record straight on a lot of other things, and that was just one of the things. And of course, when you get out of treatment, there are gonna be those days that you're gonna feel like, I just need to go back, of course. But that's where you become stronger as an individual. And hopefully, this has made you stronger as an individual, everything you've had to endure. And I hope that one day you can realize that you are not the victim in this scenario, that you were the cause of your own decisions and your own choices, nobody else but you, and that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to have made the wrong choices. It's how you move forward, how you take accountability as you move forward. And we see a little bit with you. I do see some growth. I can give her credit where credit is due, but it's not there fully. She has a lot of work to still do, and a lot of people to stop blaming her problems on. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. I understand that we all don't think alike. I love hearing what you guys have to say.
That was very, very difficult. If I did go back to the show, they were going to have me come back on that Tahoe episode, and I've said this before, but I think it's important to hone in on the fact that they would have pulled this Graham stunt on me fresh out of my recovery treatment, and there's no way I would have had any sort of composure at all. I would have freaking lost it, especially because I've learned that anger is a healthy emotion and it's okay to feel anger because that means a boundary has been violated. And clearly, that would have been a huge boundary violation, especially when the show is promising to prioritize my mental health. Without a doubt, I would have checked myself back into the Meadows. And then the story would have been Rachel is mentally insane. And this is so unfortunate. And I would have been the scapegoat fall guy, even more so than I already was.
Now, I know that she was if she had come back, it would have been during that Tahoe episode. Clearly, she wouldn't have been at Lake Tahoe. Another thing that we have to remember is that you got rid of Graham, and I hate that I even call him that because unlike, you've changed your name, Rachel, from Raquel to Rachel back, and Graham's new name is Hippie, so I should be calling him Hippie. But anyways, your parents got rid of the dog, and when the foundation could not handle him and no one could take the dog, they checked the microchip, which, yes, linked back to Vanderpump Dogs, because that's where you originally got Hippie. So that's when they called Lisa. You are making it seem like the production had all of this planned. Everyone was wondering what happened to the dog, and then all of a sudden, a foundation is calling saying that we have this dog and we can't control it. It's distressed, clearly. What are we going to do? And Lisa said that she would take the dog. That's part of what she does at Vanderpump Dog. But she also knew that James would have been very happy to have Hippie back in his life. I don't think that they set it up that way to hurt you. It just so happened that you were getting out of rehab, and instead of being able to take your dog back, like you could have done if you really love that dog, you chose to get rid of him. And instead of it being like a week, it was literally, I believe, a week to 2 weeks before she got out that all this happened. And all that went down. So 2 weeks you couldn't find somewhere for Hippie to go before you got out? That's kind of what I meant before. But it's like she thinks that they planned this. This is what happens. And you wouldn't have been there in Lake Tahoe with any of them. You would have been able to tell your side of whatever happened with the Graham situation. You know what you're doing right now? You're assuming things, Rachel. You're assuming that if you had gone back, it would have been like this, and they would have destroyed your mental health, and yada, yada, yada. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? You never went back, so you will never know what production would have done for you and what they wouldn't have done for you. Let's just call it a spade, because that's what it is, girl. You might feel like that's what would have happened, but I feel differently. I feel like I don't think that's what would have happened. But we'll never know, will we? We won't. So, move on, girl. Move on. With the Graham situation, I just feel like so much more could have been done, and they didn't try. But if it was a real human being, they would have done everything in their power to get that dog person help, like they did their daughter. So, like, I don't know. If my parents got rid of my cat while I was away in treatment because something happened, oh, hell would have froze over. It would freeze over and the Ice Queen would be coming out hardcore. But that's something that clearly they had contact with each other and she had to make that decision. And that's what she chose. And she is now playing it into this because, yes, it was involved with the show because James ended up getting the dog back because the foundation ended up contacting Lisa because the microchip saw where the dog came from originally, which was Vanderpump Dogs, and that's how it all began. Come on now. I see things clearly, and I still think she sees things very foggy.
So why the Meadows? I was looking for a place where I could get away from all of the chaos. It got so bad and my life became completely unmanageable that I knew I needed help. When I went in, I knew I needed help. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I knew I needed help with codependency. And I could clearly see that I was not in healthy relationships, but I didn't understand why that was happening. So I was able to get clarity with that. And gosh, it's been life changing. I was scared to go in. It just seemed very intimidating, this 45-day stay without music, without your phone, just disconnected. It did seem very isolating in a way. And then also meeting new people and not knowing who they were seemed very intimidating too. But I realized once I got in there that we all kind of hit our own version of a rock bottom, and we were all there to figure stuff out about ourselves and to better ourselves. So there was a common thread connecting all of us there, which helped to bring us closer together. And everyone was very welcoming. Like the people that were there longer kind of took the newbies under their wing and showed them the ropes and the different places, cafeteria, different classrooms, all that stuff. There was a big age range when I was in there. People from 27, 28 to I would say like 60 to 70s. But there was a huge age range, and I did become friends with people from different ages. And people came up to me that were older and told me that I was very blessed and lucky that I was figuring this stuff out at my age because they wish they would have known this stuff way back when because their life would have looked completely different. So it definitely is an investment in your life. It does seem very extreme, but we have all experienced trauma in our lives and we all have healing to do. So I just highly recommend it if you are considering going to a recovery center. Meeting new people was very cool. And because we would have 12-step meetings every single night, it was easy to learn people's names. And then the new people that would come in, you would pick up their names pretty quickly. And the culture inside a mental health facility is very different than the culture that I was used to.
Of course, being in any type of rehabilitation center is going to be scary, whether it's for mental health, substance abuse, anything. It is going to be scary, but that is what people have to do to get the help that they need. And it was probably a big culture shock for you because a lot of these people that were there struggled way more probably in their life than you. And I'm not trying to say that you didn't struggle, but you also have said you've been given the world thanks to your, adoptive parents, and you've not had to deal with a lot of these issues because they isolated you in that sense from, being part of, what could have been for you if you maybe were with your biological mother. For all you knew, you could have been bouncing around from house to house to house, had seen things that you shouldn't have seen at the ages that you were, and it affects you at a younger age. And I'm happy that they stepped in and they did what they had to do and they gave you the life that you had. You are truly lucky. So I can see the culture shock for sure. But that then brings you back to reality that you aren't better than everybody else. And I think there's a stigma there where you might have felt like that. And then you realize, like, I have problems just like everybody. Everybody is imperfect. There is nobody in this world that is perfect. We all make mistakes, whether they're on a grand scale or a small scale. We are all going to make mistakes. But I will say, unless someone like me gets a scholarship there, I would never be able to go to the Meadows. I would never be able to afford going to the Meadows. That's like a year in college for me, and I'd rather take the year in college with the $63,000 than go to a treatment facility. I could go put myself in a treatment facility where I still get the same great counseling and services to better my life at a much cheaper rate. But take then the money that I would have gotten from there and use it to better my life in other ways. Though I did go to college, I would love to go to college for other things. And these are things I found out later in life that I had passions for that I didn't realize. And I think that's another thing, like, I don't want to get into that, but, like, when you're young and you're, like, going from high school to college and you're like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You don't know until you really actually try things out. And you're still at an age where you haven't really tried much out in a work environment that you don't know. And now that I've fell in love with law, and I would love to go back to school to be a paralegal. But, hey, it's never too late, they say. But let's hear what else she has to say about this.
Basically, it's inspiring to share your story, to be involved in the community, to share what you've learned about yourself so far, and to be a leader in the 12-step meetings. Yeah, to like really get involved. It seemed like I was aspiring to that, but it did seem like the culture was different. A huge, heavy priority on the healing aspect of it all. Because I extended my stay past the 45 days, I became a leader in that community because I was further along in my healing journey than the people that were in there. And it was interesting too because I did stay so long that one person did come back after they relapsed, and they approached me in the cafeteria line and told me that they really admired the fact that I was still there, and they knew it wasn't easy, and that there's just like so much respect for that. And that kind of encapsulates the culture at a recovery center. Seeing so many people come and go, there were huge life lessons. One of them is not to judge someone by their first week. Normally, they are coming off of a substance and they aren't able to be coherent, or they may snore really loud because probably they haven't had a chance to sleep. Yeah, it was definitely a learning lesson for me not to judge people upon entry because I had seen them completely transform. I was there for an extended amount of time, so the newbies that came in, I got to see finish out their 45 days, and I was there at their commencement, wishing them well on their journey, and then also receiving new people and starting that whole process over again to the point where it did cycle through fully twice.
I think that's a big lesson in Rachel's takeaway is not to judge a book by its cover and not to judge people by their past experiences, especially being in a treatment facility that is very heavy on substance abuse. I know she wasn't there for that, but we're not quite sure what substances she was doing. It probably wasn't the same as most people that were there, but she probably did dabble with stuff, especially with Mr. Scumdevil over there, which I saw alive that he and Victoria did the other night, and I will be reacting to that, so stay tuned for that, because this is going to be right after this video. I'm working on that. That's not that long. It's 3 parts. We're going to quick react to it, and boom, on to the next one. But I will say, Tom did look pretty fucked up. So God only knows what she was doing with him, and that might be something, too, she was never used to. So I do commend her for learning that. Now, these are words that she's speaking. I don't know the actions, how she is with people, and if she is more understanding about people's journeys and issues. Because, let me tell you, as someone who is a recovering addict myself, and I've been clean even for 13 years, even when you say to somebody that, you know, you used to have an addiction, people look and judge you after that. I even know, like, going to the hospital, just even letting them know, hey, listen, I'm a recovering addict. Like, I don't, like, even if I need something for pain, I don't want that. They still judged us. They still searched me. They still searched my boyfriend, though we even said we were clean. It's how the stigmas around it are. And it's the worst feeling in the world when you feel like you can't even speak your truth and the journey that you've been on, because no matter what, people are still going to see you as something you're not. Even here on YouTube, I have been called a junkie so many times, and I haven't touched it in years. And they know that it hurts, but it doesn't, because I'm over it. And what really bothers me is just that stigma that people have when you even come clean about the things that you've been through. Why do we have stigmas on people like that? And I judge Rachel based off of her affair, not knowing what she was mentally going through. And I've learned from episode 1 to 32 to not judge her as much as I did before, to understand where she's trying to come from, but also to try to see the change in her. Though there are some things I just can't get over because I know she's still completely lying about it. And it's like, why can't you just be aware, be understanding, observant, and not lie? Just be clean. Don't keep going on with the story because it makes you look better. That's what I don't like.
So we would have scheduled downtime where we would read, do arts and crafts. We would play pickleball. I know all the rules of pickleball now because of the Meadows, but we had a heavy homework schedule. It, especially on Survivors Week and Family Week, we had individualized assignments that we processed every single day. So after a heavy processing day in our small therapy groups, we had homework assignments. So we stayed up late working on those and then getting up early to go straight back into therapy and cry off all of our makeup and cry our eyes out and then rinse and repeat. So that was very tiring. And that week, I read a book called The Princess Who Believed in Fairy Tales, which is basically a cute little fiction book that had this princess who was, she's brought up to dream of Prince Charming. Eventually, she meets him, and he is so wonderful and dreamy and everything she could have imagined. And then one day he yells at her and treats her really poorly. But then the next day he apologizes and makes it up to her by giving her so many flowers. But the longer she stayed in that relationship, the more the prince's mask would slip. And it was a classic tale of a narcissistic, codependent relationship that couldn't have been more suiting for processing through my love relationships and really like connecting to my inner child on Survivors Week, which was basically like our inner child work week. We also did have the ability to check out a movie. One of them was 28 Days with Sandra Bullock. And it was interesting because this is the story of her checking herself, or it was like a court mandated recovery rehab experience for her alcoholism. And there's like total stereotypes of what it's like to be in a recovery center, which some of them are, we were laughing because some of them were pretty accurate, but I feel like it's kind of exaggerated. And it also depends on like who is in there with you because everyone is so different that your experience is going to be dependent on who else is in there with you at the same time. I would say that the Meadows did not feel like a vacation or a spa. We would joke that we need like a vacation from our recovery inpatient treatment because it was so intense and heavy. I wouldn't wear makeup because the chances of me crying it all off were very, very high. I think that allowed for people to connect to your true soul self without any like extra.
And I will give her that. Everyone's experience is different. And it does depend on who you are with and what kind of a treatment center it is. Now, like I said, I personally have not done inpatient treatment. I've done intense outpatient treatment. But my boyfriend has done 2 different inpatient treatments. Both were state facilities. One of them, he said, was very similar towards hers in the sense that they did a lot of groups. They had, a little bit of downtime where they were able to do a little bit of activities, but they didn't have pools. They didn't even have a basketball court. None of that. It was like indoor activities only. One of the ones he went to was very strict. He wasn't allowed to have his cell phone. He wasn't allowed to have any contact pretty much with the outside world. And the second one that he went to, he was able to have his cell phone. I was able to communicate with him while he was in there. And he had a lot more downtime at that one. They were a lot more laid back in the sense that he was a cigarette smoker. They were allowed to smoke cigarettes. I would be able to go visit him and bring him his necessities for the week and things like that. But he said the biggest issue that he had at the last one that he went to was that there was so much downtime and they didn't have things for them to do. Nothing to really stimulate you and get you moving. The most that they really had was like a pool table that they could play pool. Not a swimming pool that they can, jump in and get some energy out. They didn't have a gym, things like that either. Which we all know, working out, helps with endorphins and all of that good stuff. So every facility is different. And if you are lucky enough to go to a facility like Rachel's, yes, they still do the intense therapy, but that downtime, you have the ability to be able to stimulate yourself and not just where like a state one where you have so much downtime, it's in the sense eating you alive because you have too much time to sit there and think and do nothing and have nothing to stimulate you while you're there. I know he's listening to this as I'm doing it, so he's, giving me his feedback as we go as well. And he was like, if I could have only gone there, it would have helped a lot with having that downtime, be able to read books, things like that. They didn't even have a library where they had books, like, unless I had brought him in one or something like that. If any of you have been to inpatient or extensive outpatient treatment and would like to share your journey with everyone down below, I would love to hear your story as well and how it differs from a facility like Rachel was able to go to compared to the facilities that normal everyday Joes really can go to.
I wasn't able to have visitors. We had family come for a specific family therapy week where our family also did therapy and lectures, and we did group work. I do still talk to the people that I've shared this experience with. I just hung out with one of those people. I am in contact with the closest friends that I made at the Meadows, and it's very cool having that support and reminiscing on the days. We had these journals that we would write nice notes to each other and give our contact info out basically. So if you're thinking of going to a recovery center, bring extra journals because you may need one for like your friends to write in. The friendships that I have with people that I met at the Meadows, they are very special to me because it's a very unique lived experience. We went through it at the same time, so we're celebrating like our 1-year mark around the same time as each other. We're able to like be accountability buddies to one another and check in and see how we're doing. I think there's just this level of vulnerability and intimacy that was created in sharing like deep, dark stuff that we connected with each other on. And and it's been very cool seeing everyone like integrate what they learned into their life and grow from that experience.
Having those connections with those individuals, that whether you did an intensive outpatient or inpatient treatment, just keeping in contact with them is a wonderful thing. And they are kind of like accountability buddies. I would also suggest bringing extra journals, especially if you are going to not a luxurious rehab, just to be able to journal, put down your feelings, how you're feeling, so you can remember, experience, like thoughts. Also help with different things you're learning, so you can look back on what you learned and how to cope. Those are great advice for somebody to that may need to go into a facility type of a thing. If you like to draw, even just having those extra journals to draw, or just even sometimes you find new things that you didn't know that you loved before, and it's great to be able to experience that. I feel like she got a lot from this place. I also feel like she's holding back with a lot of memories that she had with people she was close to before that point that will never be the same, unfortunately. But then in the next breath, she's also blaming them for a lot of her bad behaviors, when, yes, you are influenced by other people, but you have that option to say no. You know what is right and wrong for you, and you know when to get yourself out of a situation. And when you are vulnerable, yes, you're more likely to do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do, but that's where these facilities and getting the trauma therapy and regular therapy can help you make wise choices. And I only wish that for her, and I just wish that she would take more accountability for the behaviors that she allowed herself to indulge in. She blames it on others when, yes, there is a portion of being around the wrong people, but that's why you need to take accountability and know that it was you that allowed yourself to open that door. And if you don't want to do those same behaviors and activities, then you cannot open that door, not even an inch. And that's why when she was even considering going back to Vanderpump, I was even over here going, I don't really think that would be a great idea. Especially after just coming out of a facility where you did intense therapy, it would not be good for her. I still don't think Vanderpump is the right fit for her, and I don't think it ever will be ever again. I just don't think that that's for her. But even her, like, talking about Vanderpump all last season wasn't helping her in the slightest. And that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I feel like I've grown in every aspect of my life. I feel like I finally know who I am and I'm not seeking external validation. I am prioritizing sisterhood, and I've talked about this before, but I do feel like I finally know what that actually means and what that actually feels like. And some of the people that I met at the Meadows have become like sisters to me. And then also, like, my best friend from high school, I consider a sister. Recognizing the red flags in relationships is a huge area of improvement in my life. Also, recognizing, like, healthy people attract healthy people. I am attracting positive people into my life, and it is very cool to see that come into fruition because that was kinda like my mantra while I was in the Meadows. I knew I was doing a huge lifestyle change, and I knew I burned many bridges with the cast and production. So living in LA was not quite an option for me, just because also, like, trusting people would be difficult, and I was in a vulnerable state. Now that I've healed more, I feel like I have the discernment to know if someone is genuinely interested in forming a friendship or if it's something more manipulative and not healthy. And I've created like such incredible, amazing friendships out here that I didn't know could be a reality. So that's been very rewarding too. I think everyone is qualified to be in therapy. We all have something to heal from. It's important to heal from those things so that we could be better people. And spending that 90 days in an intense trauma therapy center was so life-changing, and it was definitely one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. It was an investment in myself. It was a portal to another dimension where I could connect to my soul and reconnect with reality. And I'm just very thankful that I was able to receive that help that I truly, truly needed. I want to bring my guest in. Again, her name is Audrey Hope. She's a certified trauma therapist with over 20 years experience and is also an addiction therapist at Seasons in Malibu. So let's bring in Audrey Hope.
I will agree with her. Having positive people in your life brings positivity to your life. I'm glad to hear she's learned more about sisterhood. I would hope with that learning about sisterhood and what it means to be a true friend, that you also don't cross that boundary of fucking your best friend's boyfriend of 9 years. That right there is where you lost trust in so many people. Not just your friends, not just your girlfriends that you considered sisters in that sense, but a lot of people that, in the sense, looked up to you that were watching the show and were just in awe with the decisions and choices that you made. And like, how could you not understand what you were doing was wrong? And for someone that's done pageants their whole life, you would have been used to that sisterhood camaraderie. I get there's competition involved with that as well, but there's still sisterhood and camaraderie. And speaking of pageants, so last episode, when we were trying to figure out who her friend was that was on the Valley, a couple of guesses came in, and I totally forgot about this, but Nia was part of the pageant world. So, our guess is her friend is Nia, and she knew Nia from the pageant worlds, and that sisterhood camaraderie of pageants and all of that could be who her friend from the Valley is. What do you guys think about that? I want to know your thoughts and opinions. You know I do. I love it. I love it. And let's see who Audrey Hope is and what she has to offer to this conversation.
Hi, Audrey.
Hi,
How are you?
Rachel. I've been studying you. I am so excited. For the last week, I watched season 10. I started to watch season 9, but just to really get, I just want to say that in life, it doesn't really matter what happens to us. It's what we do about it. And the fact that you're doing this podcast and doing the work, it's just the most incredible thing. So I just want to say that off the bat.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm I feel honored that you've been studying me. I think it's so funny when therapists talk about like doing their dissertation on Vanderpump Rules or on the Valley and on these TV shows that are just so chaotic and crazy. But it's true. It's like these reality TV shows do provide entertainment that's relatable to people on an extreme level because we're all human and we all experience similar things in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe we don't react in the best way, but capturing that on camera, some of us have to live with the consequences of that.
Exactly. But it doesn't matter where the bad things happen. We're still in a play in life and we have to use it. And that's what you're doing. So those are the things that really spoke to me because I know that you've been at the Meadows, right? I mean,
Yes.
so one of the questions I had for you is like, what did you learn from it and what is still left? Because I'm at Seasons. I've been doing this for like 20 years, but sometimes you could leave a rehab and you still didn't get it.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm happy to be here. I want to see like what's left. Maybe I could add a piece to it from like that soul level.
Yeah, I love that. I also read your bio online, and I love how you expressed the soul purpose and the soul's journey, because one of the things that I discovered very early on once I checked myself into the Meadows was this spirituality component that they were bringing into the therapy model.
Yes.
And I just thought that was so strange. I was like, okay, I know that this is like one of the best treatment facility places, so there must be something to this spiritual stuff. And I didn't know, like I didn't have a relationship with my higher power. I was putting men in that
Yes.
position of my higher power, and I would look to them for answers, and that is how I got so lost in my
Yes.
codependency. And so right off the bat, I was like, okay, spirituality, interesting. We had a chaplain on campus.
Yes.
And for those who don't know, a chaplain is basically a non denominational person who can help guide you and connect to like what it means to look to your higher power or source energy or the universe or God.
Right.
And we can use those terms interchangeably. And since then, I had been integrating that spirituality into my everyday life, going to church on Sundays. I tried a Mormon church. My friend took me to a Mormon church. I have found a spiritual community out here now, and it just makes a world of a difference because these people are looking to something bigger than themselves.
Exactly.
And I have been noticing this more spiritual element that Rachel is embodying in her life. I have been following her page closely and then seeing other things that like people she tags and then going to their pages. And I found that she is part of this Sanctuary Venice, which if you go over to their IG, it says community health and wellness space focused on spiritual flow events. These are why like these festivals that she's been attending and just kind of using her body to dance and move. It's the element of feeling the spirit and feeling better, just moving your body. Listen, I've tried to understand it. I don't quite get it. But if that's what's giving her this power and making her believe in something and having her find safety within these people, go for it, girl. But she's really been attending these workshops, these events that they've had. They have a space where they do this, and you can see her in some of these videos. And I'm playing a couple now. I will try and point her out and pause the video as I do it. But you can go look for yourself. I will leave the link down below. But just really look closely at the videos because she will be in a lot of them. Though she might not be tagged, she's there. And listen, I went to a Catholic school all of my life, literally pre-K all the way through high school, all girls Catholic high school. I believe in a higher being. I believe in God and prayers, all of that. But I also believe that we as individuals cannot just leave it up to somebody else in the spiritual realm of things. We need to do what we need to do to better our existence.
And have faith in that. And it helps people make healthier choices in life and reconnect with their own selves.
Beautifully said.
I finally know who I am too, and it's been a huge journey for me to get here, but I knew I needed to go through something to discover something about myself in a way. And also I was thinking about the codependency piece of it,
Yeah.
just being so heavily influenced by outside sources and realizing that I become more alike the people that I surround myself with. I was thinking back to the time when I was 21 and I did decide to join Vanderpump Rules. there was something about James specifically that drew me to him because he didn't care what other people thought, and I cared so much about what other people thought, and he was very charismatic and funny and energizing and just the life of the party, and I wanted to be more like that. I wanted to overcome my social anxiety, and so in a way, I kinda looked up to the cast members on this show because they were all achieving something that I really wanted, and not letting other people's opinions of them hold them back from being seen. And that was my soul, like,
Yeah,
that deep down was what my soul truly wanted.
and you said that in the show.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
You talked about that. You're actually really authentic with that you
Yeah.
wanted it, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
do you feel now, what do you feel is left now? Like, where are you now with needing? What else do you need? You've done a lot. What else do you need to kind of have all your dreams and to be that role model? What else is next?
I feel like right now the biggest block for me is still working with the reputation that I have found myself in, and it seems like people still are from my perspective, it seems like some people are still quick to judge and box and label me.
I hear you.
Yeah, I guess that is like the challenge, but I have like a bigger vision of what I want to do with my life given this experience and hopefully using my celebrity as a resource to get a message to a broader audience because it's so rewarding when people can relate to what I'm talking about and come up to me and tell me that like they enjoy listening to this podcast.
I think all we want from her is to be able to use her platform for a bigger purpose, not just her covering her experience and her events and traumas and all of that. There are so many bigger issues in this world, let alone on social media and reality TV, that she could really use her platform to possibly highlight what other people have gone through with reality TV, have people come on there to tell their experiences as influencers on social media and what they've been through. There's so many different things that she can do with this platform, and yes, her celebrity status, that's all I want from her. I also really just want her to realize that she not only affected someone's life completely, turned it upside down, Ariana, but she also disappointed so many people that really thought she was one way and saw her then completely a different way. And it's going to take time for people to see that change in her. And as I have done 32 episodes now, I maybe minus one, I have seen the change in her slowly progressing, but there's still that victim mentality that she still has that I just quite don't get why. Even with this lawsuit, I feel like there's a bigger reason to it. And I feel like she is, and I've said this before, jealous of the success that Ariana's had since the whole Scandoval has been happening, and how Ariana has achieved so many of her dreams and then some just from this. And she's still kind of stuck in neutral, trying to figure out, well, why can't I achieve these goals? She can. If she truly wants to do more, she could. And she needs to be able to figure out what she wants to do. And listen, I get it. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do here on this platform. And once you figure it out, keep progressing forward. And that's what I want for this channel. I want to keep progressing forward with different Bravo content, different influencer news, because I love covering different things happening within communities and all of that. And enjoy the conversation with you guys, because that's my favorite part of it all, is our conversations that we get to have.
So Rachel, going back to like the Meadows and the experience of it. Did you do any energetic work? Did they do any energetic pieces there?
They didn't do much energetic work besides auricular acupuncture and like smaller group acupuncture.
Got
It
it.
was more heavily focused on group therapy, and we would do meetings, like recovery meetings every night. And I learned that speaking about your experience is very rewarding because when other people can relate to that,
Yes.
it like, it
Sure.
becomes like a mirror for them to look at their own stuff, and I experienced that listening to other people's stories, and so that is also another motivator for me to have this podcast and talk about my experience because I know how helpful that group therapy is.
It's an invitation.
Mhm,
But one of the things that I do is I would ask, where do you energetically, where do you give your power away? Because the one thing we do as women, we give our power away, right? And they call it love addiction.
mhm,
But on another level, it's to never give your power away to anyone so that you're 100% contained within yourself energetically. That's the power we have to move into the world to manifest. So it's good to look at like I'm sure you looked at the love addiction men piece
mhm.
and how much of your energy was given to that. Like, what would you say with that? Did you give like 50% to the men, 100%?
Definitely more than 50% for
Right.
sure.
So the next question was, did you get it back? Did you call it back?
Yes.
And did you seal it up never to do that again?
Yes.
And I think that we could all see, even from Vanderpump, just how much she sacrificed her happiness for James's happiness or other people's happiness. She even sacrificed her own happiness, though she was being fulfilled with Sandoval. She wasn't happy with herself, knowing that she was lying and manipulating, and people didn't know the truth of what these two were doing behind everyone's back. So that is a big lesson that I even learned with group therapy and giving myself my all and not giving it to others. Though I am also a Taurus, I am known to be a ride or die kind of chick, and I would do anything for my man, and literally, I don't know. Like, I would do anything for him. I might have to convince him of the negative shit not to do, but we would work it out together. And I still wouldn't let that manipulation get to me. Pros and cons, baby. Pros and cons. Those lists really do help. I will say that. Especially when it's a decision that you know is not the greatest, or maybe you believe it is and you are having doubt about why it is the best choice. A pro and cons list is great, especially with men. If there are more cons than pros, then that too should be an indicator. And if we look back, there were a lot of cons with her and James, and there were definitely a lot of cons with her and Sandoval. Which, sneak peek for her next episode, she is dating again, and we will be talking about that. So we will get into the dating aspect and what she's doing differently there in a little bit.
Okay, so I'm very happy that you have experience with being a trauma therapist in an inpatient facility specifically. Could you explain the difference between inpatient and outpatient therapy and who should use each kind?
Inpatient facility is a commitment. It's no joke. It's like you're saying, I'm going to leave the world that I know, and I'm going to give the time and space that my trauma to heal my trauma, whatever it is. Because the problem with trauma is people run away from it. They lock it in a closet. They think it's going to go away, right? And they're always confused. Why now? It happened so long ago. So when you give yourself inpatient time and care, you are actually saying to the universe, I am going to take the time to stop all the bullshit, the distractions, and work on it. So people who really have been hiding things from their childhood, maybe they don't even know what it is. Sexual abuse sometimes is so unconscious, but you know when you're not doing well. And to finally get honest about it, check in, and just think of it like a spiritual journey. I'm going to do this to become the best person that I need to be, because where I work, talented healers. I mean, it is a well-oiled machine. You come in there, you better know it's not going to be the same. Sometimes I'll say, you want to run for your life right now? Because you are not going to be the same. We are going to get all pieces of the pie, and you're going to have a great life because you're finally doing what you need to do.
I would say my experience at the Meadows inpatient trauma therapy, there was scheduled downtime. So you really did like put your life on pause and you couldn't contact the outside world very often. There was scheduled phone times, but they had scheduled downtime where you could, you had to resort to something, either reading or doing arts and crafts or playing pickleball or connecting with other people. And it was, I guess, part of the healing model because it allowed your nervous system to relax at a normal state where you could like feel like, okay, this is normal. And where I was before was I was so hyper vigilant. It was so chaotic. It was like, consistently just overwhelming. So it helped regulate your nervous system to understand what normal really feels like.
Yes, it's hard to sit still because the truth comes in and you're not used to it. We're so used to distraction.
But as we just discussed previously, where like my boyfriend went to, there was too much downtime. And I feel like when you go from being so disconnected to then getting plugged back in and getting that full fucking energy back, that's why she felt like with the situation with the Graham situation, that she felt like she almost needed to go back because she wasn't ready, or she felt like she wasn't ready to be able to deal with it. And there needs to be more of adjustment where they can regulate letting some of that back in slowly before they leave, so it's not such a shock going from the Meadows or a trauma facility and then back into the real life. Because that's where some people have an issue, is they do wonderfully in these treatment facilities and then they get thrown back into society and they're back to their old ways again because they're not getting a balance before they leave of how to deal with situations that might occur when you leave after that. They're not getting, you might get the therapy and the group behind it, but you're not experiencing it. You're not having to deal with it. And I feel like there needs to be a transition kind of period. Now, the reason I chose intensive outpatient was to hold myself accountable as well, knowing that I had a group every Tuesday and Thursday, and I had my one-on-one therapy every Wednesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was doing intense outpatient. And I was still in the regular world dealing with the stuff that I was dealing with and being able to then call my therapist if I needed and be able to talk with him about the situations I was feeling and going through, where I didn't need a transition. I was still acclimated with the real world, that I was able to communicate what I was feeling as it was going on. Everyone is different. Some people really enjoy inpatient. Some people really enjoy the outpatient. I'm a person where if I feel like I'm locked away, that is a scary thing for me. And I feel like the transition would be just way too hard for me without having that acclimation of a transition period, going back into society and having to deal with everything again and not having that stable balance that I had being in a facility where, like I said, I was able to call my counselor and be like, oh my God, this is happening right now. What do I do? I'm so nervous. I'm so panicked. And he would walk me through it.
Which brings me to the point about drinking. There's so much drinking in the show.
I know. I rewatched an episode of season 10, just one episode, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm
Beware.
drinking so much," and it made me feel uncomfortable because I don't drink anymore, and so it was just like, wow, I really was living a different lifestyle.
Yes. Because one of my questions for you was how much of it has been drinking? Because if you're drinking a lot, you lose your groundedness, your alignment to reality.
Yeah, it's wild too now integrating that into my new lifestyle, the not drinking and finding a community that likes to party without alcohol, which is very cool that that's a thing. I also realize that there are people that like to party to obviously escape from reality. And that's probably the most common way to do it. But for me, I enjoy music so much and I love like a festival experience that when I party, it's intentional to connect to my higher power and to reconnect with myself. And I got back into dancing, and that has been something that I've always loved doing because before, when I had such social anxiety, I didn't have a way to express my emotions and I was able to do that through dance. So I feel like I'm like reconnecting to all of those different parts of me, and it's very easy for me to see now the people that are drinking and partying to escape something that they're not dealing with, and it's like major, major red flag for me.
Yeah. And it's about being authentic and being truthful and living a truthful life and, committing to that
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
the drinking is like life. It's things distract, and
yeah.
it's important that's why it's so hard to sit still because you got to sit with yourself. You have to sit with your thoughts. And so many people come in and said, my thoughts are racing. So it's really important I think looking at your body as a computer you have control over. It's about taking control of it all.
Mhm.
And again, doing the work on being authentic. It's a
Mhm.
risk because maybe the rest of the world isn't doing it, but so what? As long as you're doing it, then you become a role model because you're like a shining light and people go, ooh, what do you do? You can't change anybody, right? You can't save anybody, but you can invite them to join you in that. So if you do it, you're a walking example. And that is the best healing for women who need it so much now, especially.
Now, as someone who doesn't drink myself, I wouldn't say that I don't drink completely. If there's a special event, like last year was my boyfriend's brother's wedding, I had a couple drinks there, knowing that like we had a ride home, things like that. But for the most part, I personally don't drink. One, because I knew back when I used to like to drink like Rachel did, I would take it too far. I would not have self control to stop. I've learned that the next day is just not worth the hangover. It's not. But I've also now learned later on in my life that I have epilepsy, and drinking can trigger me to have a seizure, especially the next day after a heavy binge of drinking. And when we used to go camping still every year, I would drink for the weekend knowing that I was staying in a tent. And I learned the hard way that drinking too much can trigger a seizure. And I had a seizure that Sunday after drinking Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Yeah. So personally, I don't drink for my own reasons, but I will say I am a pothead. I would rather smoke a joint any day of my life. It also helps with my anxiety and my depression. It helps with my epilepsy, especially if I get a CBD strand that is both THC and CBD. Sometimes I get just the CBD and then THC. I mix the two. It depends on what I choose to do. But I'm happy that she's not drinking, that she has a clearer mind, and she can live a happy life and party it up without the alcohol. As with someone that has social anxiety like she does, it will take a little bit to come out of that shell, especially because the alcohol will loosen people up usually, and she's learning to embrace just having fun without it. And that is an awesome thing. And I can give her props for that. I know somebody that is now drinking again that wasn't drinking for, well, Rachel, and he is not doing too well. Let's just say that. Look out for that next video after this, because it will be a Sunshinery reactions video to him and his girlfriend Victoria and their latest IG lives that they did. But props to Rachel for knowing that drinking is not good for her and she's better off without it. It doesn't mean that if she didn't down the road want to have a drink here and there, like I said, for special occasions, you just learn your limits. You learn it's not worth the hangover, and it's not as fun as it used to be anymore. Like, let me tell you, it's not as fun as it used to be when I used to go down to the club drinking those, oh my God, those Midori sours, which were the grossest thing ever, but I love them. Or even like the Jaeger bombs back in the day. Oh my God, could never. I'm still a Jack and Coke girl. Jack Daniels with some Coca-Cola, and I'm good if I am gonna drink anything. And one is good enough for me.
So, a major misconception about recovery centers is that it's just for alcohol, or it's just for people that have like major issues, which, don't get me wrong, I did have major issues. But could you explain the different issues that you treat in a recovery center?
Yes. First of all, I look at it so differently, like without shame and without guilt about the drinking or the drugs. I look at it as you're on your knees and now you could begin to look up like it's an opportunity, a wake-up call. So the alcohol and the drugs brought you in, maybe, but then we open up everything that has ever bothered you in your life. The issues we treat as trauma, sexual abuse, mom and dad issues, relationship issues, anger issues, everything you could imagine it's a real fest of healing, everything. And that's why I have so many stories, because it's never boring. I mean, I'm doing this 20 years. It's just unbelievable what happens to people, what they live with. So you're saying speaking up and saying the truth is healing in itself. Speaking it out, ending denial, and stop running away is just so amazing. So whatever brought you there, we work on everything that you need to become whole and healed that you've been running from.
The Meadows had a very heavy codependency model, and basically the theory is if the branches are all of the things like alcoholism or using nicotine or toxic relationships, gambling, drugs, the trunk of the tree is codependency. That's how you get to those points. And the roots, it's rooted in shame. So it all boils down to shame as the main thing that we have to address and look inward and to start healing and be aware of our codependency tendencies, behavior
Right.
patterns, and break those. And then, that is what heals the side effects that are
Right.
the issues relationally that got
Right.
you into a place like this.
Right.
I can give credit where credit is due. That is definitely a wonderful analogy when it comes to how addiction works, whether it is you being addicted to drugs, alcohol, gambling, shopping, nicotine. It could be anything. Once you realize that you have that trait or personality that could be very addicting to things, you need to know your certain triggers and not get dependent on different addictions even after the fact. Unless they're healthy addictions, like I really enjoy coloring and drawing, nail art, things like that, where I have learned what are healthy addictions and what are bad addictions. I also know what isn't an issue for me and what is an issue for me. And that is going to be different in every single person. I smoked cigarettes for a very long time. And I, for the last 2 years, have been vaping. I did pick up a couple packs here and there, but it's been now a solid 8 months without any cigarettes in my life. And the vape, I can feel is an addiction. Though I know it's helping me, I panic when I don't know where it is, or it's not in my grasp or in my reach. I had scarring in the lungs from COVID, and I couldn't even vape for 2 months. I couldn't do anything for 2 months. I could barely breathe, let alone walk up the stairs, because that's how bad it was. But I learned then that I had an addiction to the vape. Not even vaping, but just knowing where that vape was a security for me. Just holding it made me feel better, whether I was hitting the vape or not. And I do plan on stopping vaping one day. And I know that, talking with my therapist about this, that I need to replace it with something. So with my ADHD, I also have that fidgety kind of need to do and touch and move and always go, go, go for me. That's why those little like fidget spinners are great for kids with ADHD. I will say that. But I'm going to need something to replace the vape. Something that I can fidget with and hold and know where it is. Like even right now as I do this voiceover, I'm holding my vape and I'm just flicking it around in my hand. And we've talked about what I could replace it with when I get to that point and I am ready. So knowing your issues and knowing what could be triggers, or knowing that you have this addictive personality that you can replace one addiction for another, as long as you know what are healthy addictions, like coloring. I have to color every night before I go to bed. That's a healthy addiction. Knowing those good from bad is going in the right direction as well. And it's something I believe she will learn too as she continues to go and keep growing and learning about herself. She's going to learn that she might have replaced one addiction for another, and hopefully it's a healthy addiction and not a negative addiction. And I wish her the best with that. I really, really do.
For me personally, I don't work with labels. I know people come in and they go, I've been bipolar. I just go into the healing of it without the labels. It's kind of like Chinese medicine. They don't care what you have. They just say, get on the table and we'll fix it. So I'm more about tracking exactly where you lost yourself, like where you lost your soul. It's probably, I call it a soul wound. It's probably age 5 or 6, something happened and you divided against yourself and you lost yourself. You never want to divide against yourself. I suck, I'm bad, slapping yourself. And that's why alcohol is dangerous and drugs are dangerous, because it brings up the shame, which separates you from yourself. So in healing, you want to be powerful, come from a center point and then fix it. You don't want eternal punishment. So, pay the fine over and over again. We don't want to do that. So that's where I brought in soul healing to bring back your separation from self. And once you do that, wow, life really changes.
If someone is thinking about checking themselves into a mental health facility, what are some things that they should know?
Life's not going to be the same. If you decide to go on this journey, watch out, because everything's going to come. Let's say you want healthy love. Let's say you're healing narcissism. Every narcissist will come to your door and knock on your door, because you have to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore, right? So if you go on this journey and you decide to really do it, not fake do it, really do it, then everything that you need to heal is going to come like a volcano. And you have to be brave enough to take it. So to get prepared and to really commit to change. People may leave you. Friends may leave you. Your job may fire you. That's what it takes to get into the higher realms.
Yeah, I would say it gets lonely. It gets lonely after you leave a therapy inpatient center because, you're choosing different friends, you're choosing a different lifestyle. Some of your friends won't understand, and sometimes you'll have to move. For me, I knew I needed to move because if I stayed in the same location, I put myself at risk for this person to come back into my life. I was still so vulnerable. I needed to integrate everything that I learned into my life before anything else. So it's a process. What is the hardest stage in recovery?
The beginning. The beginning
Yeah.
is hard. The detox, oh my God, I've done this for so long. I can't believe I did this for so long. Why didn't I do this sooner? All the realizations that you have to go through at the beginning is very tough. But once you
Yeah.
settle in and you start to see, the aha moments, and I try to do it as quickly as possible, give someone something where they go, oh, yeah, that aha. And they go, yeah, I want more of that. So I try to move it as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I feel like for me, you're talking about the beginning. The denial was so hard for me,
Yes.
like accepting the reality of the situation and not living in the fantasy because I wanted to believe something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if it wasn't true, then it meant something about myself that I wasn't ready to accept, and it was a long process, and
Wow.
I knew I needed to stay longer because I just got out of denial by the 45-day mark. So, I was like, I need to keep working and, like, really apply this stuff to the reality of the situation.
And this is why I say that there needs to be some kind of a transition period, because you're going from having all of the support, being able to talk to somebody at any point and at any time of the day, whether it's intense, inpatient, or outpatient. And then once you leave, you don't have that same support system. You can get put back into the same position where you left off. Most people can't just pick up and move once they get out of a treatment facility. Sometimes people have to get back on their feet and, yes, find a new job to be able to then reposition themselves in a different location, in a different environment, whatever the case may be. And that's why I have seen some friends, like I've said before, have to go back 3 or 4 times before they really grasped everything that they understood what they were doing. Because once getting back out into the real world, they had no one to stop them, no one to talk to that will understand, and were put back into that environment that was toxic maybe to begin with, and have nowhere to go to be able to be away from that toxic environment. So it's not as easy as it may seem. And that's why it's always good to have a plan for when you get out and how you can make it different. And I suggest a transition period where they kind of reacclimate you back into society in that sense, and have people there to support you as that transition is going. So that way, when you're out of it completely, you're not just being thrown to the wolves. Which she even said that is how she felt when she left. And the first thing that came was the Graham hippie situation, and she felt like she might have needed to go back to the Meadows, that she wasn't ready because there was no transition period for her. And that's where I feel like maybe they can do better with inpatient. Though, like I said, I've never been inpatient myself. I've seen what my boyfriend's gone through, and thankfully he's had wonderful support behind him that was able to be there to help him, and he had plans. and people to talk to afterwards, where some people don't. And that is an important step coming out of a treatment facility, in my opinion.
Wow, that's incredible. And then when you finally did, it's like radical acceptance, right? You go,
Mhm.
you know what? I did it. Yeah, it's a moment of
Yeah.
time where you just really have to
Yeah.
embrace.
And it's hard.
Then after that, you go, okay, I did it.
Yeah. It's hard because it's like you're grieving this situation, this like world you created in your head of what could have been that wasn't reality. It wasn't based in reality. And so it's easier to grieve that, I think, once you realize that it's not based in reality, but it still is a process.
Even with love, like love is an illusion, and there's a honeymoon stage, the stage one, I call it the heroin stage, and everything's great. But it doesn't, when you're educated that it doesn't stay, it never stays in stage one. It moves into reality stage where the blindness ends. And that's hard to take. But if you understand real love goes through these stages, then, like these 5 stages of like, wow, you got to heal, you got to get to know each other in reality. You're good because it's that process. Like there's always something, there's always a gift. So it's about transformation and what you're going to do with it and understanding that's the process of life, not to get stuck there. Oh, I did it. It's terrible.
Mhm.
It's part of it.
Mhm.
It's part of the journey and it will serve you well. Rachel, everything you went through will help so many people. So many people. I mean, so you've got to just keep going until it all transforms. Because
Mhm.
drug addiction, sometimes I don't recognize some of my clients. I don't recognize them because they're so changed.
Mm.
And it's amazing. You did that. It's hard to believe. And then they use it and it gives them fuel. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. How can you prevent someone from relapsing?
I tell them they're going to want to drink the moment or use drugs the moment they leave. Like you need to get down with reality. Like just because you've been in therapy doesn't mean you're not going to want to drink you and accept it as part of it so that you don't go, oh my God, I just spent 2 months and I want, like, it's part of it. It's always going to be there. I call it a Venus flytrap. It's always going to be there. And if you get close to it, it's going to get you. But understand you're going to, like, if you have to go to the airport, you're going to want to drink at the airport. You're going to want to drink on the plane. Okay, say hello. There you are. I know that you're going to do this to me and not put so much shame. And you got to become your own best friend in this process.
Mhm.
People are so hard on themselves. That has
Mhm.
to stop. There's a whole change in how to view addiction because I see it as an amazing opportunity, a door opening. I don't have shame and guilt around it. So some of the addicts would go like, wow, like that's so refreshing. But I really believe it. I really believe it because it's part of your journey.
Mhm.
And it's refreshing to see that Audrey has no shame when it comes to people and what they've done, because when you, even saying I'm a recovering addict, people do look at you differently. And I hate to even say it, but even on this platform, being open and honest about what I've been through has only gotten me hate from other people. I'm not saying any of you guys that are listening to this podcast, but I've been very open and honest since coming on YouTube. And because of that, people have used that and my trauma and what I've been through to weaponize and to hurt me, to make me feel pain, though they do not know me or my journey or my situation. I hate even bringing this up, but I remember 2 months into making this channel, I had a good friend pass away that was part of the community that we were in. And this was during the time of the Jake Paul allegations that he had AR'd somebody. And with that, we were talking about it in another creator's chat, and there was this one person in there who was another creator who said, well, you should expect that if you're going to a man's bedroom, what's going to happen? And then he kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going. This is the type of person he was. Another creator friend of ours did not know that this situation had happened, and she had had him up on her panel. And I had tried to go up there to explain to him that not all SA situations are the same. When I say SA, S assault. And he didn't want to hear anything about it. Instead, he used that to weaponize it against me. He sat there for over a year and a half. He stalked every bit of my life, everywhere I went on YouTube. He threatened to get my SA report to read out loud on YouTube for everyone to hear, to embarrass me. He made comments like I was too ugly to be SA'd. If I was on panel with other creators, he would click the StreamYard link, which if you don't know anything about StreamYard, there's a private chat for the people that are on panel to also be able to chat. And he was saying the most outrageous, nastiest, horrible things. Like he wanted to R me and my mother, that he hoped my mother would die so he could piss on her grave. When I say that there are some nasty human beings on this platform, I am not even joking. The lengths that this man went to, let alone other people. So tying it all back in, I felt the shame that I felt from that moment when it happened to me all over again, because one person chose to be an asshole, gang up on me with other people to make me feel ashamed of being a victim of assault. And it's not fair. It's not funny. But to them, it was. And I fear even just talking about this, that someone will listen to this podcast, clip this, he's still around. It's not like he's not. And we'll give that to him and he will start attacking me again. It was not fun. I left YouTube for 6 months. And yes, I came back because I wanted to talk about what was going on with Vanderpump. And here I've been ever since. And I've enjoyed every second of this with you all. And not one of you have ever made me feel ashamed of anything that I've talked about with you all while doing these podcast commentaries. If anything, I've had people come to me saying that they could relate to me and situations that I talked about. And that makes me feel better knowing that when I do discuss certain things that other people can relate and they can also feel some type of relief that there is somebody out there that is talking about it, because it's not easy to open up, especially in the society we live in nowadays, where everything is scrutinized and judged, and people, yes, are entitled to their opinions. But when you sit there and assume things about people's lives that you have no clue about, just to hurt them, you are being an asshole. And it's not cool, dude. I have learned since then to forgive him, not for his actions, but for me. And I do wish him all the best in his endeavors. And I only can hope that he has learned from all of the horrible actions he has caused other people, that karma is a bitch and karma bit him in his ass. It wasn't any of us. It was what he did to other people, not just me. I was not his only victim. But he did get kicked off the platform. He did go over to Twitch for a bit. And even though he is permabanned from YouTube, he has since made another channel. And he is now trying to preach the good word like he was some innocent person, when reality was he was the devil in disguise. So do I have sympathy for Rachel and all she's been through? I do. There are just some things that I can't have sympathy for her and I need to stand up for, which are her lying about certain things that are very clear were not lies, that she's lying to cover up what she's done. And I do hope that one day she can admit that she is not the victim in this situation that she caused, but she was actually the perpetrator in hurting somebody else's life. And whether Ariana has fulfilled all of her dreams or not, she was still the victim in this situation. And she needs, Rachel that is, needs to take ownership for the mistakes that she also made. Whether she was manipulated or not, she needs to take responsibility for her actions. I know that was a heavy one for you all. Please, though, let me know what you think about everything down below. We have about 2 minutes left. So let's get through this podcast.
Would you say you would recommend not drinking for everyone that comes through a treatment facility?
Yes. It's like having good food and having juice, it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to breathe and have fresh air and get the mind. The mind has to get back to itself, so of course. And also it's an activator. If you start doing that, even though let's say it wasn't your issue, it sort of will bring you to other issues again, and you can't lie to yourself about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look at it differently and see that you don't just want to be sober. You want to have a great life.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like it just lowers your inhibitions. It's much easier to get like sloppy and make
Well, it
mistakes
does. That's a
and
fact.
yeah.
Like you think it's so great because you're in the illusion of like, wow, that's so great. But you have to go to the worst thing that happened to you. And so that you understand you're not drinking your first drink, you're drinking your worst nightmare, what you hate the most.
Okay, I have one last question for you. If someone can't afford a facility, what is the next best option?
Go to AA, go. People in groups, it's wonderful. Talk about it. Do it for free. Go get a sponsor.
Mhm.
Begin to talk about it and go. Just take a step.
Yeah, so there's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Codependency Anonymous or CODA. There's even Gamblers Anonymous or overspending. There's love and sex addiction. And with the love and sex addiction part, I think a lot of people want to deny the sex part because there is shame surrounding that. But I think clarifying that you confuse sex for love
Right.
and intensity for intimacy.
Oh,
And that is the sex part of the sex and love addiction.
right.
So,
The thing is when you're working with people, you have to be real. And I just want to say the fact that you've been through something and experienced something, that's a lot. People can trust your journey. And I just want to say that there's so much ahead of you because of what you're doing, even doing this. You really need to know that. Like it helps so many people to see how you've, taken to this. It's healing in itself. It's so inspiring. And that's what heals.
thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and giving your expertise. And it's been a pleasure having you and getting to know you. And if people want to follow you on Instagram or social media, where can they do that?
At the Audrey Hope.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Audrey Hope.
I do want to also point out there is also Narnon, which is a fellowship for families or people that have loved ones that are addicted to things and how they can cope with someone that has an addiction so they can better understand what that person is dealing with and how they can handle the situation with a loved one that's dealing with an addiction. That is also a great organization. I know personally when my mother went to an Ar-Anon meeting, a couple of them actually, she learned a lot about what I was going through with my addiction. So that is just one more group that you can look up. I will say she named a lot of great groups. There's also scholarships available for people, but like I said, there are plenty of programs available. There's a lot of help out there. I gave a lot of resource in my last video, and I'm going to give a lot of resource in this video. So if you've gone through anything and need resources, please reach out to me. They will also be down below. I'm always here for you all, and I know you all are here for me, and I appreciate that the most, and that's why I opened up a little bit more in this video than I ever have before, and we will do more story times and get to know each other better, and hopefully lives where you can come and join me and chat, and we can all talk and all get to know each other better. But let me know what you guys thought about this down below. I'm on to the next one, and like I said, Scandoval and Victoria, there's going to be a Sunshinery reactions video to those IG videos, so stay tuned for that.
And you may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it.